What is shifting? Like, what is ramping things up?
I think the identity politics is ramping things up. So I think there's a new mentality out there. It's this intersectionality politics on the left that says that there are a bunch of victim groups, basically. Right? There are blacks and Hispanics and gays and Jews and Asians. They're all victim groups. And we get those all those people together to attack the system because the system is keeping them down. And if you and there's a hierarchy among these victim groups. And if you are a straight white male, you're at the very, very bottom of the hierarchy in terms of viewpoints that should be acknowledged because you're the creators of this vast white supremacist system that keeps down everybody else. So if you're a black woman, you're near the top, right? If you're LGBT, you're at the top. If you're a white guy and you challenge the viewpoint of a black woman, your viewpoint is an attack on her identity. And therefore, she has the right to shut you down. And so the idea is that your words are violence to her identity. And therefore, she has the right to react. This is the term you hear on campus a lot is microaggressions. And this idea that my opinion microaggresses you. Now, even that terminology I think is really stupid because normally in regular life we would say that's insulting and you said something I don't like. The terminology microaggression suggests aggression, like I'm actually doing something aggressive to you. And the rational response to someone aggressing you is to use physical force in response. And so you start to see a more violent response. I think it's been growing in our politics. I think there's a reactionary side on the right that's growing. If there's an identity politics on the left that says, black identity politics, gay identity politics, female identity politics, I think you're starting to see in some areas of white identity politics that's almost formed in response. Like, okay, well, if everybody else gets to have their identity politics, why can't we defend ourselves on those same grounds? I hate that shit. I mean, I think it's terrible.
I hate that shit too, and I would like to find the person who invented the term microaggression. Because that fucker, whoever it was, they created quite a mess. Now, I'm sure you saw what happened at Evergreen with Brett Weinstein, where literally the left is eating itself, and that's where it gets crazy. It's like you're not progressive enough unless you're literally submitting to leaving your class because you're white. Like, you can't be there because you're white. They want a day of absence, meaning the professors, the white people. And then when you don't do it, you're somehow or another racist and a Nazi. I mean, the whole thing was very bizarre to watch, but not surprising because you see it so often all over the country right now. And it's almost like some new flower of ridiculous thinking and behavior has blossomed and it's in bloom everywhere. And when people can point to it existing in other places, like in Missouri, where that woman, what was her name? Crick? Was that woman who got the
Melissa
yes.
Click,
Yeah, whatever her name was.
Yeah.
When you see it in video, when you see her on video saying, can we get some muscle over here?
Exactly.
Like, this is fucking insane. Like, you're telling a photographer, and by the way, a minority, an Asian man.
Asian guy,
Asian man taking photos of a public place that you've created some safe space. But it's this weird thing where it's half of it is identity politics, but it's also wrapped up in this need to control people and control people's behavior, control their vernacular, control the way they communicate, and how much you give in to groupthink. It's weird.
It's scary. And Jonathan Haidt, who's a social psychologist over at NYU, he did a really good piece for The Atlantic in 2015 about this phenomenon, this kind of safe space trigger warning phenomenon, this idea that you must never be forced into a position where someone has an idea that opposes yours. And what he said is it basically makes people crazy. It actually makes you crazy. That the idea in psychology is that if you have a chain of thoughts leading to a bad outcome. If you're depressed, or if you're depressive, then you have a chain of thoughts leading to a bad outcome. The way that psychologists deal with that is with cognitive behavioral therapy. They say, okay, where in this chain of thoughts are you going wrong? Are you attributing to somebody a motive they don't have? Right? Is your wife really being nasty, or is it you just attributing nasty to her, and that's why you're getting depressed, you're spinning off, right? Try to control your own chain of thoughts. What the microaggression trigger warning culture does is it actually grants value. The more you are offended, the more value you are granted. And therefore, you have actually an interest in being offended. We give you awards if you're offended.
Right.
You're treasured if you're offended because it demonstrates that you're woke, right? The more you are offended, the more we can show that you are woke. And because you are woke, therefore, you're granted this virtue. You get to lord it over everyone else. I mean, I say in my speeches, if we could somehow identify like the LGBT, half black, half Hispanic, 1/4 Native American, little person, then we would finally have the person who we could go to answer all of our questions because their identity would be unquestionable.
It'd be Yoda.
Right. If we could find Yoda, we could just get rid of democracy and discussion altogether. He could just rule from on high. He, she. I don't want to put a gender on Yoda.
Right. I don't think Yoda's gender. Does Yoda? I guess it's
Yoda's
a guy.
a dude, right?
It's got to be a guy with deep voice. Maybe we're being rude by insisting.
I don't know.